Hello, equestrians. I am super excited. I just adjust the camera a little bit. So today's topic, this is, I think, a pretty good topic. What or how or what are some good exercises to get my horse uphill? And when I say uphill, no, I don't mean like physically going up a hill. But what are some exercises to get your horse uphill, as in, carrying their weight on their haunches and actually, sitting? I like to call it sitting. So what are some good exercises for that? Well, before I dive into that, I just want to go into why is this important? Like, why do we need to make our horses uphill? Why is that even an issue? Because I think a lot of people, they might have heard like, oh, put your horse on the vertical, or put your horse's head on the frame, or make your horse uphill, or make your horse collected. But then if you don't understand the why it's important, I think a lot of the times it's hard to kind of convince you to do it. It's like when I was in school, I didn't think I would ever need math. So the teachers had a really hard time convincing me that that was relevant to my education, because like when I would ask them, like, what do I need to learn trigonometry or like geometry, or like, what do I need it for? Like, they couldn't give me an answer. And so I just didn't learn it. I still don't know any form of geometry. And I've never used it, didn't miss it. So, it's kind of the same when it comes to horses and everything. If you don't know why, then it's really hard to convince you, especially in the moment when you're working on it with your horse. It's really hard to kind of keep at it and stick with it, and actually ask your horse to do it, or to see the benefits. Because your horse, if they're not fit, and if they don't have, the back muscles yet, they haven't quite developed there, or they're a bit younger, sometimes it can be a little bit harder to convince them that in the long run, like, I promise you, horse, this is going to benefit you someday. There's a reason why we're doing this. A lot of endurance horses, for example, like at the start of an endurance ride, the horse doesn't know that they have to do, 50 miles that day. The horse doesn't know. So it's up to the rider to kind of tell the horse to pace themselves and not just gallop full speed for the first 10 miles, because then they're not going to make it to the 50. And it's the same with, dressage work, or kind of building that fitness and getting that back muscles for your horse. They might get a little bit sore, just like if I was to go to the gym. If I've been like super lazy and I haven't exercised for a year, which is basically my pandemic Corona workout plan. If I haven't exercised and I've been a little bit lazy, and then I just go to the gym randomly and start like bench pressing 100 pounds or whatever, like, I'm going to be sore the next day. So, it's kind of hard to convince the horses that, hey, this is actually going to benefit you, if we ourselves are not convinced. So why do we need our horses to be uphill? So horses in the wild, obviously, they don't have our weight on their back. So because we are riding them and because we are working with them, it is up to us to kind of help them develop those back muscles in order to carry us, in order to carry our weight. And, horses in the wild, like, that's not something that's necessarily a top priority for them. But you will see that the older horses, the horses who've, survived the longest in the wild, the horses who are, very sure-footed in the mountains, or the horses that are, doing their thing, they are naturally balanced. They are naturally carrying themselves more uphill. And you can actually observe that in wild horses. So it's not just because we are riding them. However, our additional weight does make a difference. So the more that we train our horses to be uphill, the more that we can help them develop those back muscles, or those top line muscles, and the more that they can actually shift their weight from their front legs to the hind legs. Okay, so if a horse is standing still, and I know a lot of you guys might already have seen that kind of photo, where if you factor in like the front legs plus the shoulder plus the neck plus the head, a horse just standing still naturally has about 60% of the weight on the front legs. So as soon as, they start moving or start doing sports, we have to actually shift it so that ideally it's more 60% on the hind legs and 40% on the front legs. So we have to kind of swap it, and kind of, even though obviously naturally they have the head and the neck weight in the front, we need them to carry it in the back. So that's kind of the gist behind what is uphill and why is it important, and how and what are some good exercises that we can use with our horses. Let me just go ahead and move this banner out of the way. So how can we work with our horses? What are some exercises to help them develop and become more uphill? And there's so many different answers to this question because there's so many different exercises which you can do. I will say, if you haven't already seen the International Equestrian like virtual clinic, then I would definitely recommend to start there. In particular, the video which was about like cavaletti exercises and pole exercises, because so that was the speaker was Laura, and she did a great job. She pulled out like her slides with like, these are the pole exercises that I'm doing with my horses or my students, and she kind of walks you through those different pole exercises. All of the poles had like, or all of the exercises I think had less than 4 poles, so it's something that anyone and everyone can do. And so, that's kind of answering part of the question. What are some exercises to do with my horses? Well, I would definitely say poles and cavalettis, or even small jumps. That is where I would definitely recommend is a good way of doing that. And the reason is because the poles sort of naturally make the horse pick up their feet. So if you have a horse that's kind of, dragging their feet along or just kind of scooting along, then the poles, it is a way of kind of making the horse actually pick up those legs. And that sort of helps lift the back muscles. So, you can do that while you're lunging them. You can do that when you're riding them. And the great thing about poles or working with poles is this is, I think, exercises that every discipline should be doing. I know I've had a lot of like my dressage students, like I remember I had a student, she had big goals. Like, I want to be in the Grand Prix someday. And she had this like fabulous horse, which she imported from Europe, and like super top horse. And she was really struggling with this horse, kind of in the similar, like, getting it to develop. And it had so much energy, but she didn't know where to put the energy. The horse was like too much energy for her, to be honest. And I made her do a lot of poles. I started having her do all kinds of pole exercises. And you know what? It made the horse kind of direct the energy more upwards instead of forwards. So the horse stopped racing and running so much. And it also gave something for the horse to kind of think about and look at, their feet and kind of look at where they're going. And, that horse had gotten a little bit bored with just like everyday dressage routine. So the poles actually made a big difference for the horse, made a big difference for the rider, who now was like so much more relaxed because her horse was actually like more relaxed and having fun. And then the horse's back, this horse actually put on quite a bit of muscles in a very short amount of time. So, pole exercises are definitely very beneficial, and I would definitely recommend that. If you have access to an actual physical hill, okay, I know it's like, how do you make a horse uphill go up a hill? It sounds kind of funny, but actually going up hills and going down hills does help. And I want to mention this, going downhill, especially if you're walking downhill, can actually really, really help you with learning how to feel what an uphill horse sounds like. Now, let me say that again, because I know that sounds backwards. Like, how does going down a hill make you feel uphill on a horse? So let me just kind of break that down a little bit. So what I mean is a couple of things happen when a horse is actually going down the hill. First of all, their head is most likely, it's going to come up. Okay. And if it's not up, like, you need to kind of pick the head up a little bit. So the horse's head is going to come up. And as soon, you see, even me, as soon as I'm kind of like picking my head up, I naturally go back, don't I? And the horses are the same. Like, you naturally kind of go back and you distribute the weight a little bit more on the hinds. Okay. And in order for them to go down the hill correctly and successfully, especially if it's like, very rocky footing, or, they need to be very careful. But even if it's just a little small hill, even if it's just a little, ditch or a little bump or something. But when they're kind of picking their head up and they're putting a little bit more weight on the hinds, they actually, when they're going downhill, have to step under their belly with those hind legs a lot further than if it was, just a flat surface. So if you have a horse, especially that, or maybe yourself, maybe you don't know how to feel if your horse is uphill or downhill or not, and you're having a little bit of difficulty trying to figure that out, then ride down a hill. Ride down a hill and walk. Don't let them run. Don't let them, go too speedy. Just kind of ask them to pick their head up a little bit. And I want you to really feel like they're going down the hill. Oh, their weight's back there. Okay. I want you to really pay attention for that moment. Okay. And the great thing is, if you have like a small hill or something, again, it doesn't have to be a huge hill. Okay. It could just be a little tiny, whatever. But if you have access to something like that, then, you can make circles around it, like go up and down this hill a few times until you feel that, like, oh, in that step, I really felt my horse like really reach and step underneath them with their hind feet. So walking up hills and down hills, it builds their fitness, and it also helps you as the rider to develop that feeling. And you'll notice that the more that you start teaching a horse to carry themselves more uphill, the more they will naturally start carrying themselves uphill, even when you don't ask. So in the beginning, it might be a little bit of a process because they don't have those muscles yet. But the more that they do develop the correct muscles, not the wrong muscles, the correct muscles, you will see, even when they're running around the field with their friends, they're like, beautiful, and they're like floating. And sometimes my little Arabian mare, sometimes when I watch her in the field, and I like just wish, like, man, if you would just do that stuff on command, girl, like you would be just fabulous. But when I work with her and I teach her stuff, she usually goes and she does it in the field, and she's like a fabulous horse. And then I go to ride her, and it sometimes it falls apart. And you know what? That's okay. Like, riding horses is a process. So yeah, hopefully that has helped shed a little bit of light. So somebody says that totally makes sense to create that feeling. So I'm glad that you enjoyed that. I will say too, a little bit more in depth about this discussion. So again, for exact exercises like poles and cavalettes and things, the International Equestrian Virtual Summit, Laura's talk, her discussion specifically, she goes over a lot of poles and things. And then the other discussion in that same clinic that I want to mention is actually the one by Christian Vogler. And that's actually my husband. And I actually got an email from a lady. She said, oh my God, like Christian's description of developing feel, like I've never heard it explained that way before, but it makes so much sense. So I would recommend listening to his talk as well, because he has that perspective of, sometimes it's hard when you like go and you listen to some of the like clinicians or the experts or the people who've been riding horses for like 40 years. Sometimes like it's hard for the experts to sort of relate to how it used to feel when they first started riding. I know sometimes, like for me, because I rise to the trot automatically. So sometimes it might be hard for me to remember when I was 9 and I didn't know what it felt like to rise to the trot. So, I think listening to Christian's talk, because he's coming from that sort of new rider perspective, he wasn't a rider 4 years ago. So it definitely, I think, helps shed a lot of light on things. And it's kind of from a different perspective than I think what most people are hearing. So those are the 2 talks in the International Equestrian Virtual Clinic I would suggest that you watch or rewatch if you've already seen them. And yeah, again, hopefully, as far as the clinic goes, there is a link somewhere in the description. So make sure that you click on it. My hands aren't like coordinated enough. Like, click on the link somewhere, wherever it is. So go and watch those 2 talks, and let me know in the chat or in the comments if you guys have any other questions related to how to actually get your horse to go uphill, or what are some other exercises. And then also, if you have other topic ideas or other questions, I'm going to be doing a Q&A on Tuesday. I do Q&As every Tuesday. And then I'm also going to be jumping in every now and then and talking about different topics. So I'm just going to go ahead and share with you. You can comment in the chat or send me an email, reach out to me on Facebook, reach out to me on YouTube, or like wherever it is. You can find me. But yeah, send me an email. Let me know about your questions, or just let me know how it's going. Like, say, oh my gosh, I tried that hill exercise and it worked. And now I know that my horse is going uphill, or I know my horse feels downhill now, or, I just want to hear your light bulbs, because sometimes when you share it with others, it makes it more real. And I think it's great to celebrate your wins, even if they're small wins, like, oh my God, I never felt that before. Like, that's a huge win actually when it comes to horses. So yeah, that's my email, and I look forward to seeing you guys, and I will see you guys in tomorrow's video. And yeah, go ahead and subscribe or follow the page if you haven't already, and take care, everyone.